Ananda, Jigyasa, Sadhana, Shraddha. When they come into school, it is Ananda, the joy of learning. Then it is Jigyasa, the curiosity of learning. Then it is Sadhana, the hardest of hard work. And then it's Shraddha. You go beyond the Guru, the five minds of the future, the disciplined mind, the creative mind, the synthesizing mind, the respectful mind, and finally the ethical mind. Discipline goes beyond compliance. Without governmental intervention, the private sector alone cannot create high quality schools.
Hello everyone, I'm your host Seema Chhoriya and I welcome you all to another insightful session on great principles. India, the country which is heading towards to be the hub of economic growth, the country which has maximum youth population. But is this human capital enough? Are we taking all the necessary steps to educate the human capital in the direction so that we get towards a nation which is called developed and not developing? To hear more on what kind of education is the right education, what are the changes necessary, and is Indian school education system preparing the children for the future? We have with us a very devoted and experienced educator of the day, Col Sekhar. He is principal of Hyderabad Public School, Kadappa. Welcome to Great Principles, sir. I'm really honored to have you with me in conversation today.
Thank you very much for having me, Siva. It's a pleasure to be here.
So, sir, before we dig into today's topic of discussion, we would first like to know, and also my viewers would like to know a little about you. What has been your journey, and what keeps you going in education domain?
Right, it's an interesting question. I've been, as you're already familiar with, I'm a very proud soldier, a veteran now, and joined the army as a cadet in 1987, became an officer in 1988, and I'm very specifically from the Army Educational Corps, which is a separate service in the Indian Army, wherein we are focused when we started at educating our men towards higher classes and higher goals. Later on, over a period of time, the role has evolved in the sense that we have had youngsters coming in with better education, the role responsibilities have evolved, and thus I was in the Army Educational Corps between 1988 and 2009, from Ladakh to Sri Lanka to Pachmadi to Dehradun to Nasik to Pune to Tangdar, which is in the Indo-Pak border. From there to Sainik School Satara as its vice principal, as it now is called. Then to Pachmadi, then to Leh. From there, back as the principal of the Rashtriya Military School, from where I opted for premature retirement, PMR in Army terminology, voluntary retirement in civilian terminology. Post that, I initially headed the Atul Vidyalaya, an ICSE school based out of Valsad, Gujarat. Valsad is very famous for its mangoes. About three and a half hours from Mumbai, about an hour and a half from Surat. I was initially the principal and then I became director and was also the founder director of Atul Institute of Vocational Excellence, very specifically for students with Adivasi background. Started off with the support of the government of India and of course government of Gujarat. I was there, as I said, for 8.5 years. From there, I went to Trichy as a director, went to a couple of other places where we mutually did not find ourselves comfortable with each other. And today, now, over the last year or so, I head the Hyderabad Public School in Kadappa.
So, sir, hearing your journey, what I understand is that you have traveled through the length and breadth of the country, and being from an army background and associated with military schools, There is one thing which I have observed. Students of these schools have, by this thing instilled in them that they take a lot of pride in being Indian, and there is a lot of love for the nation. So, how would you? And if NEP is focusing on instilling the similar quality of taking pride in being Indian, so how do schools instill this feeling of patriotism, of being Indian, of taking pride in nation in our children?
Interesting question. I have a different take on it. So, firstly, Indianness is part of what we are. So, firstly, how do we define I'm an Indian? So, I look at the whole thing. We have Vasudhaiva Kudumpakam, the world is one. Then we have India, the idea of India. Then we have the Constitution of India. From there, you have the president, then you have the Council of Ministers, then you have Parliament, Judiciary, etc. From there, we come down to the Ministry of Education and we talk about NEP 2020, then the various states and union territories, and we move forward. Firstly, instilling patriotism, it does not come as naturally the way you perceive it to be. There is an Indianness in all of us. So, how do you define patriotism? Is patriotism the concept of saying Jai Hind on 15th August and 26th January and Happy Teachers Day on September 5th, and after that you go about your job? Not really. Second, is patriotism a better understanding of what India is, what it stands for? Is patriotism a concept wherein we talk Jai Hind, Vande Mataram, etc. But when it comes to putting your sons and daughters on harm's way as armed forces officers or from the BSF or elsewhere, we say that no, that doesn't work for us. So the question is in terms of being patriotic, which normally is associated with somebody who wears a uniform. I have a very differentiated view of it in that as a nation, what does India mean to you? Does that Indianness include respecting the soldier beyond 15th August and 26th January? Beyond having the national flag on your chest on these 2 days? The willingness to put your sons and daughters into the forces in service. So I find a serious dichotomy here. There is a great deal of these stories happening around. There is plenty of generated patriotism on these 2 days for about 48 to 72 hours either day. And after that, we go about doing what our job is. Patriotism and Indianism or nationalism means that you support the country but also point out when we go wrong. It is not something which is blind. In fact, I believe that if you blindly say yes to everything, it goes beyond supporting one party. The support of a nation also means that you are patriotic enough, you are honest enough, you are courageous enough to point out when things go wrong. And inside the Indian armed forces, that is something which is deep rooted. Unlike your understanding outside, we can question our leaders, ask specific answers from them, be questioned yourself, and get very good replies. But once a decision is taken, the attitude of passive resistance is unacceptable. There are three, four options given. You fight for one option. After that, the commander has taken a decision. You follow orders in letter and spirit. That for me is my nuanced understanding of what nationalism is, patriotism is, Seema. I hope you get the gist of what I am saying.
Absolutely, sir. Yes, so you very rightly said that patriotism and being nationalism, there are two different things, and we need to understand this. And here, I wanted to also understand from you that as the policy is talking about that they would instill the feeling of taking pride in the country. And the policy is also focusing on instilling among the learners the deep rooted pride in being Indian. How do you think this would take shape? How would others do? For army background people, it comes naturally. Seeing the people in uniform and being patriotic is different, but taking pride in being Indian, talking about, yes, I'm proud and I feel good to be Indian, how would we instill this feeling?
Okay, how old are you, Seema?
So 39.
39. So you are at least 15 years plus younger to me. How well do you appreciate being preached to you about patriotism and nationalism? Are you comfortable somebody giving you gyan on this is how it should be? Or is this something which comes through actions, behavior around us? And it also comes through understanding the value of being an Indian in a democratic space. My own way of looking at it is one, preaching, especially to the modern generation, rarely works. Two, I run a school here. We have well over 1,000 students here. When we talk to students, they are interested in stories. They want to know what happens. But equally, there are the WhatsApp University and the Google University combines to create a perception of what is right and what is wrong. Firstly, to be Indian is quite natural. It's our right. We take it as a matter of pride. The counter question to you, Seema, is why do we not take pride in being Indian? So it also comes up when we have a system where criticizing anyone in government is considered anti-national. It is across the board. Nobody likes to be questioned here in modern India. We all believe that we are always right. You are asking me questions, you are pushing me, you are making me give out my points of view. You have every right to disagree with me. But I do not have a right to be disagreeable with you. We have a concept here of always saying that everything which the present government, state or central says is not to be questioned in the name of nationalism and patriotism. So the very definition of what it is different because we require in a functioning secular democracy to question decisions in the right manner, to be able to enable our rulers whom we have elected to take better decisions. One. Two, to answer your specific question, I would go beyond what the textbooks do, talk about our freedom struggle, talk about how it was achieved, talk about our leaders, talk about how they all worked in unison, talk about how important it is to be in a free country, to be able to express yourself, talk about what these values bring to you and make them understand through a combination of actions, attitudinal improvement, demonstrable behavior of teachers in terms of the understanding of nationalism and patriotism, encourage them to question you, and encourage them to understand that our leaders, whether they were for the freedom struggle or of today, are human beings and they also make mistakes. And my final point here, Seema, is our students today will live to see the 22nd century. You and I will not. So, as of today, we are talking about India at 75. Where will India be at 100? We still have over 200 million people not having 2 square meals a day. So, what is the challenge for the under 30-60% of Indians? One, how do we provide for them? Two, how can we arrest climate change with the kind of challenges we are facing? Three, very, very important. Today, the vast majority of Indians are below 30. 25 years from today, that majority will be over 50. How do we take care of our increasing geriatric and senior citizen population in the context of India's culture and values, wherein we take care of our elders and do not send them to old age homes? How do we get these into a thing wherein we become a multi-trillion-dollar economy? To every student in India, every child in India goes through schools and colleges. They get the jobs, not always of their choices, but are able to get 2 square meals a day and are able to provide 2 square meals a day for those who depend on them. That would be my understanding, and encourage them to achieve those ends would be what I would be trying for.
Absolutely, sir. So here, what I loved about your answer was you were very clear that how do you, demonstrate few things. You cannot just put it in the textbook and say this is nationalism, this is patriotism. You actually share real life stories. You share the history because this is what today's generation understand. So this is what I wanted. This is what we all need. We need to understand how this generation is going to study further, how you describe a particular topic to this generation,
Yeah, I
what
will
should be the
add
material.
something to this. Sorry to
Yeah,
interrupt you. We had a over 100-year-old freedom fighter here in Kadappa. He was part of the Quit India movement and he was put in jail for about 3 years right here in Kadappa. He's well over 100. I'll share that story with you. We sent our students to interact with them, teachers to interact with them. And when they heard live what happened, our children, our students started valuing the freedom. They initially, we all take it for granted. How many of us have been born before independence? Our parents might be. We have a proud prime minister who was born after independence. So the generation which brought us independence is going off, and most of the youngsters believe Gandhiji was an old man who may not be able to understand what is internet. How do we bring the link between that generation and today's generation and make them value and think like what the Israelis think? Our nation first, we second.
absolutely so. So this is the main take, that ensure that whatever you are educating your children, you give them the real life examples, share the stories with them, and let the feeling come from within. Let the child feel from within that yes, I have learned something today. So moving ahead in our conversation, sir, today I would like you to define what is education. What do you think education really is?
The frank answer, I do not know. It means different things to different people. Just like we talk about leadership, just like we talk about various other aspects, education for me is the ability to question. And if you are able to have the most uncomfortable of questions thrown at you, and you look out for those answers over a period of time, then you have set your students right. That would be my first answer. My second answer would be much more contextual. Is it books? No, not at all. Do we require to go beyond books? Most definitely, yes. How do we define education in Indian context? can we make him a responsible citizen of this country? When he crosses 18, when he goes into the wider world, is she or he or a transgender a responsible citizen? Ananda, Jigyasa, Sadhana, Shraddha. When they come into school, it is Ananda, the joy of learning. Then it is Jigyasa, the curiosity of learning. Then it is Sadhana, the hardest of hard work. And then it's Shraddha. You go beyond the Guru and understand as to what you yourself are in terms of what our rishis and people say, self actualization. Do you understand yourself the very best? That would be a more philosophical definition. Finally, I would ask myself the question, which swarg do you want to go to? Devdutt Patnaik talks about three swargs. Do you want to go to Indralok? Do you want to go to the place where Lord Shiva is? Or do you want to go to Vishnu Lok where you are happy and you make others happy? Basically, can you be a giver? Can you stop being a taker or a matcher? As Adam Grant talks about in his seminal book. Do you want to be a giver, a taker, or a matcher? If education can make you a giver, which I believe is what every teacher's dharma should be, then we have made a good human being.
Wow. As you rightly said, education, everyone has their own meaning. And I really loved your perspective of education. Yes, if you could give the ability to a child to ask the questions, and if you can take the questions on your own self, then you are educated. So, sir, how do you impart this kind of education? I think our current system, we are actually evaluating only the memorization power of the students and not the understanding. So what would be your take how we can make education more meaningful at foundation level?
Wonderful question. The NEP 2020 makes the right noises, has the right words, have the right answers. This cannot be answered one dimensional. When India got its independence in 1947, less than 10% of our women were literate. Kottayam, from my home state, was the first literate district in India. Now, moving forward, we now have well over 90% of our students entering school. The definition of education keeps moving, Seema, in the context of what India is. Firstly, our national leaders thought, yaar, kuch to padhe, rote or non-rote, kuch to padhe, school to aa jaye. In the 40s, in the early 50s, they were all huge challenges. Today, do you know how many students are there in India today? 320 million. That is the complete population of United States, of which the students who reach college level after plus 2 is just about 26%. The rest 74, where do they go? One. So, from the perspective you and I are in, we read education in a different context. In terms of, first, I would say the student has to be school ready. From school ready to be learning ready. From there, Bloom's taxonomy, cognition, metacognition, he requires a better understanding, and once he leaves school, he has to be college ready. From being college ready, he has to be job ready. From job ready, he has to be life ready, which includes you as a woman or a man being part of a family, looking after your children, and most importantly, looking after your parents. Life ready in its complete context. Now, India at 75, we are talking about all of this. Where will India be at 100? What skills do they want? What personal, intra and interpersonal relationships and skills do they want? Are they going to live in a world much beyond pen and paper? Will we have schools in 25 years? Will we be talking like this? It makes us much more human and humane. So let me continue on what I was saying. So the question is, when students are born today, or children are born today, they move into mobiles and these digital systems very quickly. Earlier on, how to operate a mobile in the early 90s, we all try to understand what a mobile is. It used to cost 35, 40 rupees per minute, and incoming calls were costlier. So we moved on from STD booths, etc. So one is, what is your idea of the future? From there, I would start. One, what is your idea of the future? Where will India be at 100? A student entering junior KG or nursery this year will be looking for a job in India at 100, 2047. So, what does the future hold? That's one part of being job ready. The second part is the universal values. I would definitely look at it from the perspective of what Hart Gardner said, the five minds of the future: the disciplined mind, the creative mind, the synthesizing mind, the respectful mind, and finally the ethical mind. So, amongst our children, can we encourage them to be creative? Can we encourage them to be respectful yet firm in what they are doing? Can we encourage them to be disciplined, not compliant? Stand up, sit down is compliance. Discipline goes beyond compliance. And finally, how do we handle the ethical challenges? The ethical challenges, I'll give you an example. Let's take student Sachin. He does not have enough money with him. His mother is down with stage 4 cancer. The mother is admitted in a hospital. If he does not get 25,000 rupees worth medicines, his mother will not survive beyond 24 hours. He goes to the chemist. The chemist refuses because there is still a lot of money due to him. Sachin beats up the chemist, pushes her to the ground, takes the medicine, and gives it to his mother. Is he right or wrong, Seema?
In the circumstances that he is, the emotions always plays the vital
I
role, and
want yes or no.
I think so he's right doing it
Is right.
because
So, are you encouraging Gundagardi? Are you saying that the world, if the mother under tough emotional circumstances, he is right in pushing that chemist to the ground, pushing her and getting medicines? And if you say he is wrong, then I'll question you and ask you, is he right in getting his mother, in letting his mother go off without him putting in an effort? So these are the ethical questions we have to ask ourselves. When euthanasia happens, when doctors deal with it, all of us deal with that. So can we get them to understand these things? In my understanding, that is the education we have to give. So, to answer your question, one, invest in teachers training. 2, invest in teachers training. 3, invest in teachers training. That is 1. 2, nations, states to invest in quality education. I believe that without governmental intervention, the private sector alone cannot create high quality schools. It has to be government led. It is there all across the world. The good nations totally subsidize scholastic education. As rightly pointed out in the new education policy 2020, skill development has to start and we have to go varied. But there is also the challenge of tackling the education mafias. The then Col Secretary, who later on became the Education Secretary, Mr. Swaroop, talked about coal mafias being easier handled, the education mafias being tougher. There is a vested interest for all of us to push through the existing system because that is where our comfort zones are. I've always said that schools are more difficult to change than even the Indian army because yang ganti bajti hai class shuru hona hai. They do not want change. Schools are the most difficult to change. It has to be driven, it has to be pushed. We have had COVID 19, a lot of changes have happened. So, my definition for a good school is the teacher in a Googled, WhatsApp world has to be a learning curator. All the information available is there on Google, on internet. With 5G coming in, it will be available everywhere. How do we get the right information in the right context and tell the students and encourage them to think? Investment in teachers training, giving more value to the teacher. As one of my students asked me, doctors have doctor, colonel has colonel, why can't teachers have TR in front of them to give them more importance? It's easier said. A 9 standard student questioning me is good. However, as a nation, we require to respect our teachers more. And please check, Seema, no higher education institution cut down on their fees during COVID 19. The pressure was only on schools. And I'm sure you are a parent. It
Yes, sir.
is, it is parents like you who drive schools to reduce fees. If you want good teachers to come, you require to pay them well. If you pay peanuts, we will get monkeys.
Well said, sir. And yes, the essence lies here. Sir has very well described and explained to us how important is the role of teachers. We all have seen this visionary policy. We have read it across. We talk about it a lot. This should happen, that should happen. But the key person who is going to give shape to this is a teacher, and we need to invest in teacher. So today, Col Sekhar has shared some very, very valuable points with us. It was a very thoughtful and insightful session. And as our father of the nation, Mahatma Gandhi said, "Be the change you want to see." And these words, I think, our guest today abide with great determination. I can see that in his thoughts, in his continuous learning, and while researching on him, I understood that his work and action describes the leader he is. And today, I'm really proud to have him here. It's my privilege to have him on our show. So, thank you so much, sir, for your time. It was a wonderful session with a lot of learning, a lot of takeaways. Thank you so much. I really appreciate your time with us.
Thank you very much, Seema, for having me. I would only say that I am an ordinary man with an extraordinary commitment. I am as ordinary as they come. And I would end by saying, as a teacher inside the classroom, Am I willing to say I do not know? Am I willing to say I am sorry? Am I willing to say I will refer and come back to you? Am I willing to say I apologize? Am I willing to tell the student, my child, you know better than me on this aspect? Can we bring that humility inside the classroom? That for me is the key to the thinking revolution, or the revolution in education the national education policy aspires to achieve. You speak to Dr. Kasturi Rangan, the man behind NEP 2020, well over 80, such a humble man. Once I did a session with him where he answered questions from students all over India, and the kind of preparation he did for that, and the willingness to answer any question. I learned a lot from him. I was humbled by his humility. Can we all show that humility, whether we are teachers, students, parents, or the wider society? Thank you for your time.
Absolutely, sir. And thank you for ending on such a wonderful note of humility, a very much needed quality for all of us. Thank you so much, sir, once again. We are really privileged to have you. Thank you.